marks the start of an exciting webinar series called Gender Research Learnings and Exchanges on New Insights, abbreviated the G-Lens webinar series. The webinar series is hosted by the IITA Gender Science Network. And the goal of the network is to be a vibrant community of practice for gender advocacy and enhancing gender research, its communication, and impact. We have two key objectives of the network that are relevant to talk about today, and those are develop and share gender research tools, methods, and analyses for wider application by IITA scientists in and outside the network, and also to create a critical mass of scientists integrating gender in their research. One way to meet these objectives is through this G-Lens webinar series. The webinar series is open to all IITA staff, and across the different webinars that will make up the series, here's what to expect. Insights on different aspects of gender research at IITA, extensive dialogue about gender research tools, methods, and approaches, and potential collaboration for further research and impact studies. So the first webinar in this series is titled Structurally Integrating Gender into Cassava Breeding, the Triadic Comparison of Technologies, or TRICOT, and Prospect. The presenters today are Dr. Bella Tiken, Associate Gender Scientist, Ms. Olamide Ola Sobikan, Senior Research Associate, and Mr. Abolor Bello, Senior Research Supervisor. All of these scientists work in the Cassava breeding unit and are based in Ibadan, Nigeria. Before I hand it over to Dr. Tiken to begin the presentation, I would like to inform you all that after the presentation, we will have about 20 minutes for questions, responses, and discussion. So please note down any questions you have to ask, either verbally after the presentation or during the presentation in the chat box. Thanks. So I now see we have about 48 participants who are attending this webinar at this moment. So great turnout, and we appreciate the great support and interest. And so now I'll hand it over to Dr. Tiken to present. Thank you.
Yes, good morning, good afternoon, good evening in some instances, everybody. Welcome to our presentation on structurally integrating gender into cassava breeding. This approach that we've been developing in cooperation also with CIAT and biodiversity is an approach that really looks at engaging participatory variety selection within gender research and within breeding. So it's really an interdisciplinary effort. These are the presenters on panel for today, and these are also the other contributors to this presented work. I will go over the outline of my presentation. I will first focus on talking a little bit on how we got to this approach. We started with surveys and we went to this approach. Then I will continue towards looking for socially inclusive methodology for including all value chain actors within breeding. And then I will highlight the TRICOT principles. What is the idea of a TRICOT? How does it technically work? Then I will continue with TRICOT citizen science trials, upscaling baby trial approach in Nigeria. This is really the work that we have been doing, the application of TRICOT within Nigeria and especially related to cassava breeding in Nigeria. I will continue with TRICOT used in food science. It's another application of TRICOT, so not for field trials, but to work with consumer testing, food science consumer testing. Then I'll highlight the social, especially social inclusiveness part of the study is about selection of tricot participants, selection of the lead farmers that get information from those tricot participants and how they were trained. Then we go to a feedback results to tricot participants' household, where we feed back the results of the tricot to the participants. And then I'll conclude with our use, contributions to and prospects of the tricot approach. We started, as already said, we started with surveys, doing surveys on what kind of traits do people want to see, what kind of traits do especially farmers want to see in their cassava. And for that, one first initiative was a large-scale survey among 2,500 households in Nigeria, and you can see on the map how large it was, and you can see each color represents a different area in Nigeria. And these results showed that women and men both like the similar traits, but certain traits were more and frequently mentioned by women. And that was good to make food products, and roots are easy to peel. So it was really the food processing aspect that was more mentioned by women. Because this was a little bit vague. The traits were not really well defined. So we moved to another approach to look at really what's a kind of more qualitative and smaller scale study in two areas, to look at what kind of varieties do men and women cultivate and why do they cultivate it. So for each variety, we went to ask, what is the specific purpose? Why do you use this variety? What are the benefits of that? And we also asked what they used for them. And this showed that women are mostly more involved into processing, and they market the food products as well. So they are really into food processing, while men are more into the selling of fresh roots. Some of them process as well, but they usually sell more roots, and they usually sell them to processing women or starch factories. Further then, we have some statistical data here where you can see that processing related traits, such as root size, which can be related to peeling work, cooking processing quality, flesh color, good price from flesh color is not is more related to men, but so the cooking aspects are more mentioned by women, and the agronomic characteristics related to flesh color of the roots, good price, marketability of the roots are much more highlighted by men. So after that, we didn't get much further because the need arose to have all these traits more precisely defined, because good for Gary processing is not something that a breeder can directly work on. So we really needed more concrete traits to communicate to them. So we realized that we need to assess tested knowledge as held by women processors. Not only tested knowledge, of course, but also more in-depth information on what women would like to see in the variety with regards to the work that they are doing. So to keep the direct connection to varieties, we started to work with farmer processors in 2 locations through a mother-baby trial approach. So we had a mother trial and baby trials in farmers' fields. In each location, we had 20 of those baby trials. And the mother trial was processed with champion processors, and the baby trials were all farmed and also processed by the participants. So we used pairwise comparison of roots there, so that you don't have to ask, what do you like in this root? No, we had very contrasting varieties in the trial, and we just did pairwise comparison that would elicit the traits that were important. So what were the things that people use, the criteria people use to distinguish variety. And also for each of these pairwise comparisons, yeah, we asked why is one is better than the other, and this is really also providing you information on which varieties are more liked than others. So this is a kind of overview of the mother baby trial set up in two states. You have a mother trial, you have baby trials, and as you see, we did the mother trial with 3 champion processors who are all also farmers actually. And then also you had these small trials where we also did participatory processing, and we measured everything, all processing diagnostics were measured. And as you can imagine, you get a kind of larger variance within the baby trials, or the mother trials. It's more a kind of classical setup. And this exercise elicited more specific traits that are important for women processors, like fresh roots. You see the traits for Gary, you see specific traits that are important. Color is very important for Eba. And for Fu, you see also what we derived from these pairwise comparisons. And here you can see some effects of difference between varieties where color was very important, and also the texture of the product. If you look at the fufu at the right side, that was processed by the 3 processors, Paulina, Sarah, and Elizabeth, you see that the moldability of that fufu has a problem. And apparently it was the same variety that also had a color problem. You see a kind of darkening or discoloration that was absolutely not liked and was identified as crucial for the sale of the Gary and also for the acceptability among consumers. So we went quite far. We could see that the A spectral matter value was kind of a proxy to assess the quality of the food products. So the A value was exactly related to a Browning formula, and there was 99 correlation. And you see here the one that is not preferred and the other one that is preferred, and this is crucial information. What we wanted to go, we did this in 2 locations, and we included social aspects to these baby trials, but we wanted to go further to have more representative information. And what we knew is that scoring is very unreliable. Pairwise ranking is more reliable than normal ranking. And then mother trial evaluation is statistically more informative, but a scalable version of the baby trial format is needed for representative and social inclusion verification with users. So that's what I've been saying. We had these baby trials, but there's only 20 in 2 different locations. And we had the mother trial information, which gives good statistical information, but how representative is it? We want to also to look at the social, some social parameters of the users, and we wanted also to assess those varieties in the context of the farmers. So that's why we propose a tricot science synthesis approach, which evaluates a lot. It's a kind of a lot of baby trials, but no mother trial. So it's a kind of incomplete block, which embraces variance. It embraces differences in agri-ecologies, and also differences in ways of processing and other social things. So it was really a time to focus not only what people want for demanded traits, but really to look at something in the context of a farmer. So the trials in the farmers' fields take along the crop as growing within their livelihoods. And that's what it's all about. We want to really know how relevant it is within farmers' conditions, because that's the genetic gain that you are assessing there. So what are the tricot principles? Well, the tricot principles are, it's an incomplete block design. So each processor, a farmer processor, evaluates only 3 varieties in 3 small plots. And for a number of varieties that you can evaluate can differ. If you do more varieties in total, then you need more participants. But each farmer only has 3 varieties. Then we have centralized storage, analysis, and climate platform to get all these data together. And there we are working to integrate this database also with breed base to be able to have these data more easily integrated, and analysis can be integrated there. And there's also a citizen science approach. So participants are not mere respondents, but they are seen as research partners. And data is done per phone with the help of trained lead farmers. And then also results that we get from which are the best varieties, which are the less varieties, or which traits are important, which are less important, are fed back to the participants. Then also the tricot evaluation with the consumer ranks 3 different varieties from best to worst at different moments in time after planting. So this is not just not consumer, it should be farmer there. Sorry for that mistake. So the evaluation is just overall of the 3 varieties at each time point, from harvesting to processing, which one is best overall and which is the worst. And then the third one is automatically in the middle. And you do that also for specific traits, for the specific traits that have been determined of being important among farmers. And so there's no rating involved. It's not like trying to score on a scale of 1 to 10 or something like that. It's really a comparison between concrete samples. So the tricot's role in the CGIAR, it's proposed as a structural method for last stage on-farm breeding testing. Then it's also identified as a cost-effective way to systematically manage user feedback and assess genetic gain in farmers' fields through scaled participatory variety selection methods. So each of many farmers across a relative large geographical, ecological, and cultural area compares 3 small plots with new varieties as part of a balanced, incomplete block design. And ClimeUp is identified as the software, as I already been stating. And then there's this 1000 Minds project that is recently funded that will streamline all these data collection and also standardize the data collection among tricot farmers. And we are working on constant feedback to this ClimeUp platform on how to improve the analysis. So here's another explanation of how the tricot works for clarity. For example, I have 10 varieties to evaluate. Then I make packages of 3 different combinations of 3 that I give to each farmer. Each package stands for 1 farmer, and in that way, you get you will be able in the end, if you get the best and the worst for all these varieties for the different time points and traits, you get the overall ranking of all these varieties, and that's done through Plackett-Lewis and Bradley-Terry model. Now, going to the work that we performed here in Nigeria, we had 320 farmers across 44 states, 30 varieties that were evaluated in total. And of course, each farmer has the 3 plots. As you can see in the photographs, the woman who is standing there has 3 plots, and you see it's the plot has just been harvested. And from harvesting, it goes to evaluation of the roots, evaluation of the processing, evaluation of the intermediate product gari, and then also evaluation of the EBA. And what is important here is the processing is not done only by the tricot participant farmer, but we really look at who is doing what in the household. So the person who is normally doing that work is evaluating that aspect of the work. And the final choice of the best overall variety is done as a discussion with the whole household together, to be able to come to a final preference of the variety after the whole exercise from planting up to processing into the products. And also tricot participants, we have these trials now in the fields. For this year, they will also determine matrix yields using local measures to be able to also live up to variety release demands to see real, not only ranking data, but also to have some real yield data. So these are kind of the agronomic and the after harvest characteristics that are evaluated. Don't go and read all these, but it's really more to show that we have different stages of evaluation where we do these best and worst of the three varieties evaluation. You see up till 9 months, and then also going for the harvest and the processing into food products. So what can we do then with all these time points? Well, what we saw, for example, is that the final choice that people make for a variety after the whole experience is very much determined by the quality, the food product quality. The yield was also important. As you can see, there's also density of root. The dry matter determined also the final product. But you can see that things as branching or germination and all that was not so significant. So people really judge varieties on the products that they make from it. Then what are the influences of the social covariates on variety preferences? We saw that if we simply divide the sex of male and female participants, we can see that there are specific varieties that are liked by women more than by men, and other varieties are a little bit more liked by men than by women. And this you can also do not only for looking at varieties, but also at the traits, and there are many statistical analysis possible to get a good grasp on how important these covariates are. For example, ongoing analysis now, we are now looking at the sex of the processor. So we have the tricot farmer, but if we look at who did the processing within all these households, then you can see that if the processor was a man, then you get also some varieties that are liked differently, liked specifically for that group. And then also if you go to the sex of the tricot farmer, and you look at people where the sex of the tricot farmer is a man, but the sex of the processor is a woman, you also get some variances, and this can reflect some intra-household decision-making factors. And also here, for example, if the processor is a woman, and then the tricot participant is also a woman, we can see a difference if the person is the woman, is she processing herself, or is she giving it to another person? Then also tricot used in food science. Here it's kind of different. We don't have trials and we don't plant varieties, but we plant a set of contrasting varieties in one trial, like a mother trial, so to say, in different areas. And then we going to process food products, and those food products then become the trial. So the ABC is now the food product. So you don't have so many different times of evaluation. You can do 2 times of evaluation where you evaluate the food product, and then you store the food product, and then you evaluate it again. But there you only have two moments. And what you see there is also very interesting. The climb-up system analysis determines some nodes, and you can see that people in the city, for example, they all like 30572 as a variety, and the rest is all minor. There's not really a chance for the other varieties. They really like that one. But if you go to the more rural population, you see that there are some other varieties coming up, and within that rural population, the occupation is also important. Like, are you just a consumer in the city who doesn't know how to farm, or who is not related to farming work? Then you see that you get another taste, another preference than people who are in the rural areas, but they are involved in farming or more closely related to processing work. And this is important information because we can link that to food science measurements and panel data for threshold determination. So then I will go for the selection of the TRICOT participants, for how socially inclusive is it. So in each of the communities, we have focus group discussions held before we select TRICOT participants in such a community. And it's really looking to identify different social groups within each community. So and from that we involve representatives of those social groups. We go to contact them and we start to recruit TRICOT participants. So, and they are proportionally selected. So if you have a small group, a small ethnic group that was determined at the village level as important, so that social group was at the village level defined as important, as having another status, then we are going to see, is there processing expertise within that group? If there's no expertise there, or they are not cultivating cassava, it doesn't make sense, of course, to include them. And then participants are selected based on the expertise. Yeah, that's what I've been telling. So it's really, you're not going to recruit somebody who has been doing cassava for 1 year. You check the expertise, and we do some certain questions to know if people are really involved in cassava work. And this is just a kind of sheet that we use at community level, because this is very important. In social science, a lot of times we have these categories like women, men, ethnic group, religion. But what we are doing here is at community level, we decide what kind of locally relevant social groups can you distinguish. And in this case, you see that ethnicity is important, but it can also be that you have a farmer group which works differently than others. So this is based on a discussion with the people there to determine local relevant social group that distinguish people. So it's not just a standard assessment, demographic assessment. And then the selection of the lead farmer and the training. So the lead farmer is chosen by 10 farmers in a community that have a TRICOT trial and together have almost all the varieties that we included in the TRICOT, in that as part of that incomplete block design. So that's it's really a kind of democratic process. All those 10 farmers choose their representative, and we also are not going to we build on local institutions. So we are identifying a person that is respected and trusted in the community. So we are not creating a new product, creating a new person because of the project that then gets kind of status because they are involved in our project. Then lead farmer training. Lead farmers are training groups per state, and we also do a lot of effort in communicating the traits that they will have to evaluate at each stage, and try to translate that in local language and really have a discussion on what actually each trait means. And of course, the source of the traits, which is also important, the source of the traits is coming from surveys with farmers. So the traits that we'll be evaluating, I've showed some of them, are in the language already of the farmer. So we are not asking them about can you evaluate whitefly resistance, or can you evaluate dry matter? We don't put it in the words. We put it in the words that we have already the traits definitions that we already got from surveys. Then feeding back the results to TRICOT participants' households. This is a very important aspect of the project, as I've been highlighting already. So we present the different results for the different states, because you cannot have the results for one community, because then you don't have enough replications to say something. But the results per state are fed, and also for the whole country, are fed back to the participants so that they can see, well, in my state, this variety was the best. And then we identify the people who had that variety, have a discussion on, as a kind of verification, if that variety is indeed good or not, and to have more qualitative assessment. The discussions about the rationale on the best and the least chosen varieties at state level and each evaluation point. So that's it. They all get a list so that they can see what they did throughout the whole evaluation. They can see the results and they can see the final choice, and so that they also know what they did and how they can relate that to the results. So this is important because we are in the process of designing to make this a kind of automated process that will be done very frequently, just like you do breeding trials very frequently. So it's really a feeding back loop. We try to improve the climate analysis, and we also include different new insights into the next year of the tricot and the tricot year of tricot that you are doing with the people. So what are the lessons learned? Well, participants learn new agronomic practices, and here you see some citations of people during the feedback exercise. There's a change in perception. People thought that a thick stem and is always necessary, but people see that also with the thin stem, you get very good results. And then for consistent farm management, especially weeding, as well as the benefits of keeping records, was a kind of emerging property of the exercise. And then a last point that is very important, but participants feel empowered. They feel their work is being valued, and they like partnering in the research. The idea that they have just an easy setup of 3 varieties and they compare, and they are given also bags to process those varieties. So it's made very easy. They like the kind of bricolage or the kind of do-it-yourself experimental setup. And you see that some people have also benefit. They have had a new insight that a certain variety is better, and also some people, like a woman was telling us that she now gets another whole other positionality in the community, as you see from the last statement. People in my community and my husband now see me as a woman of prestige. So insights from the feedback work. We have verified the results of the tricot, which more or less came together. And we see that breeders have really made a good effort to develop improved varieties, but there's still a gap in assessing new improved varieties and causes for food quality traits. If earlier on, before release, and even earlier on in the breeding, it could be possible to select for these traits, that would be very important. And then it's necessary to increase understanding of the influence of ecological and cultural factors. So we really need to know how the external validity of the breeding trials, how is that related to real on-farm trials, and to include a lot of those factors. Tricot can provide you with overlays, looking at social, climatic, and all kinds of factors. Then the experimental tricot plots designed to be enlarged and to enable the processing. So of more food products, so for multi-purpose use, which is very important. We only looked at Gary and Abba now. And in-ground storability is very important, which is not so much looked into with the cassava breeding now. We have some trials that indeed go a little bit further to 1.5 months, and we see that the varieties are living up to that, but it's not systematically evaluated. So this is the final slide. So what is our use, contributions to, and prospect of the tricot approach? Well, we have a social inclusive purpose of selection, and this gender division of labor in the household of the participants. So this is an add-on to the existing format, because that was not there before. We use, and also in this 1000 Farms project, we do really cooperation with technical breeding to integrate social inclusive PVS data with breeding data. And this is all about also being more cost effective to realize maximal social impact, which should align with the sustainable development goals, so that you can really see, well, if we include these traits, we have maximal social impact, because we know what kind of groups what the traits demanded by certain groups. We know that those traits have to be important or are not important enough to be included. And then we identify partnerships with these farmer processors and small medium enterprises representatives that can help update information we need for product profiles during product advancement meeting. And then TriCOT goes much further. I mean, TriCOT is not something that we just do from IITA and the NAS just put the trials out there, but it should be really become a platform to close the gap between the scientific community and the users, to have a kind of communication of information and identification of complementary innovations that can impact breeding more, like what agronomic practices are, for example, very good. And it also emerged already that people have been, when we installed the trials with them, they saw specific practices that would benefit them. So why not use that network for that? And of course, we cannot set up all those trials each time from IITA or NAS, but we have to link with NGOs to create win-win situations, to practically engage with farmers and users for all kinds of impact. And then also we are working on modifying the TriCOT to propose as on-farm trials for variety release. So to have a better informed strategy for variety release. So this was my presentation. If somebody's interested in the status of the TriCOT trial at the moment, we have a publication. It's a working paper. It's been submitted for publication. It's not yet published. It is a working paper, RTP working paper, and it sums up the methodological developments. And here, the last photo that I'm showing here is the woman who said that her prestige has been increased because of our inclusion, in the experimentation. And the story can be found on the gender portal under farmer stories. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very, very much, Dr. Teakin, for that fantastic presentation. Clearly, the presentation showcases the extensive research you and the team members in the Cassava breeding unit have carried out over these past 5 or so years. So big congratulations on that. And obviously no easy feat to get to this stage. Yeah, and thanks so much for putting this body of work together for both this knowledge sharing purpose and then now for discussion with IITA colleagues. I see that in the chat box, there's been a number of either comments praising the work or questions that have started to be responded to by colleagues. So I'll ask Martina now to take over a bit and let us know about some of those questions that have been coming in and some of the responses, and then to help out with fielding additional questions from colleagues either verbally or through the chat box. Thanks.
Sure. Thanks, Steve, and thanks, Bella, for the great presentation. Thanks to all the people that have supported you in your team. I see a couple of comments in the chat already. Millicent, thanks a lot for the presentation, and says that she finds very interesting to learn more about how citizens are connected to science. Also, Gundula highlights the effects of record keeping and partnering in research, which speaks for participatory methodologies, which are very important in our work. And of course, there is also an exchange that has been going on, starting from a question asked by Robert Asiedu about the ease of harvesting, if this was also assessed in your work. Bello and Olamide have already replied in the chat box. So if I understand correctly, because it is quite technical, so maybe you can also jump in and elaborate more on it. To this question, Bello answers that it was mentioned feedback activities with tricot participant, that slant planting is easier to harvest compared to horizontal and vertically planted stem cuttings. And Olamide integrates, saying that the ease of harvesting was not assessed by participants. However, during the feedback session, female participants mentioned that the slant planting method facilitated easier harvesting of cassava compared to the vertical planting method. So I hope, Dr. Asiedu, this answered your question. Otherwise, you can post something in the chat again, or maybe we can keep discussing on it afterwards.
What I can say about that is that also branching habit came up as important trait to be evaluated. So all the traits that we evaluated were the traits prioritized by farmers at each stage from earlier surveys. And ease of harvesting as such didn't come up, but we did assess, of course, as like ease of branching, and but no direct assessment of that specific trait as you formulated.
Right. Thanks a lot, Bela, for integrating. So if it's okay, I will just go on because I see some more questions. There's one question from Phineas, who asks, so listening to the presentation, the tricot has many steps from planting materials production, farmer selection, training, etc., to harvesting and processes. How do you say this is cost effective? Could you share how much it costs? How much it costs you to get these results?
Yeah, the cost effect, normally PVS is always seen as costly, and that's not only the effect of the cost actually, because somehow also participative rice selection, people just don't really want to spend money on it, while the private sector spends a lot of money on it. But that's another discussion. But indeed, if you compare the prices to a normal participatory variety selection in different locations, and you compare that to the tricot, there is a cut of at least 40 to 50% in costs, because you lead farmers in our case will get the information. So you go there maybe to plan the trials, and then you don't come around there anymore, but you stay in contact with the lead farmer through phone. So everything is done through phone, and as the evaluation is really simple, it's really about the best and worst. This facilitates getting information at very low cost. Of course, this was the first time that this approach was done within RTB crops, and RTB crops are a little bit more difficult than doing a tricot with rice, where you can easily have your package distributed in a small bag, and you can even keep it for 1 year or two. So we are trying it out in RTB crops, and because we are doing it for the first time, of course it would be more costly, a little bit more costly than the ideal situation where we have everything established and the platform is working well. We've built trust with farmers, and we have identified partners who can help us with this to even scale it up more, as has been done within other crops. So there's a real cost reduction in that sense. Yes, like at least 40–50%.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bela. I do not see any hands raised so far, so I will just go on and picking more questions.
Yeah, I'm looking at the questions as well.
Yeah. So there's one question from Toya Ayankani, asking if you assessed width competitiveness and canopy cover of the varieties, and if so, how was it done?
Yeah, we did. Maybe I can go back to, let me see a little bit, talks a little bit easier. Yes, here you can see, oh, that's too far. Here you can see what we evaluated at each time. And as I've been saying from surveys, we know for each month what people really prioritized from interviews. And that's like here you see it, weed cut patternless canopy formation starts even from 1 month. From 1 month to 6 months, we evaluate this. Even to 9 months. It's a very important aspect actually, and it's not always related to branching. A lot of people think, well, if it has a lot of branching in the variety, then it's weed competitive. It might be the case, but you also have varieties that don't branch too much, and they have still a very good canopy. So it's really about canopy rather than branching. But branching was also evaluated, as you see.
Okay, thanks a lot, Bela, for your reply. There is another question from Kidu Mtunda, who asks, where did you take the quantitative data for the release of new varieties from? From mother trials or where? So
from that question, I understand that she thinks that we've that this already has resulted, that the tricot has already been like functioning as a on-farm testing for variety release. Is that the assumption?
maybe Kidu, you could reply. You could unmute yourself.
Well, maybe she's not able to.
I am asking to unmute. So Kidu, it would be great if you could ask your question again. If not, we just
in the meantime, I can say that our data are used in the first product advancement meeting that we had, and based on that, a choice was made to put one variety into the candidates for candidate release set. So those were still taken to the on-farm testing, about 10 farms per state in Nigeria for evaluation. So this didn't replace the variety on-farm release trials.
All right, thanks a lot. I see it does. Yeah, please go ahead.
Now we are in the process of discussing this approach with the variety release committee and seeing what it can contribute in the sense that it can function as equivalent of the on-farm trial protocol that is now defined by the variety release committee.
All right, thanks a lot. Kido, if this answers your question, if this does not answer your question, of course, feel free to post it again in the chat or ask for more clarification. I will just move on and pick some more questions. There is another one from Oluboyenga Pelemo, who thanks the presenters and asks if large-scale cassava processor can also be accommodated in tricot studies.
Yes, absolutely. And I've been making that remark already also to Dr. Igesi, Shidozi Igesi. It's really important because we have now mostly the small scale farmers, which represent the majority maybe of cassava farmers and processors in Nigeria. But breeding is a future investment, and we see a growing amount of larger farmers and farmers who are also dealing more with seed and buying seed. So a kind of subgroup, or how you call it, subgroup, but at least some of those people should be included in the next tricot round. I think it's very important because we cannot only represent the idea that it might be nice that it's 90%, we're covering 90% of the production and processing. But as a breeder, you want to look into the future, and you want to see what is also the current the variety demand. Most people, they replant their own varieties and they get it from their neighbors, but there are also specific farmers who are looking out for new varieties, and they and Dr. Shidoshi can talk a lot about that. There's a lot of demand on new varieties. And what do those people want? We want to see, because they are kind of pioneers, so to say. They are more into the seed cassava seed systems also as more important than the majority of the farmers. So we should really focus there. It's really important.
All right, thanks a lot again. I do not see any other questions in the chat box, and yeah, there are no hands raised so far. So I encourage the participants to maybe still use this couple of minutes left to maybe take the chance to raise the hand and ask your question directly or post it in the chat box. Otherwise, Steve, if you would like to add something in the meantime while we are waiting.
Yeah.
Or maybe
Yeah,
also Lamid and Bello, I don't know if they also want to add something. But please, Steve, go ahead first.
Okay, and it looks like Bukhar has his hand raised.
Yeah.
He can go ahead and ask his question. Go ahead, Bukhar.
Thanks, Steve. My question is actually about using tricot for variety release committee. So I think the variety committee use on-farm testing, and tricot is also used with farmers, but there are, I think, essential modifications that need to be happening before we use tricot. Basically in the approach, because the tricot, if I understood well, is farmers receive set of 3 varieties and rank them. So assuming each time we are about to release a variety, we usually use maybe 2 varieties, we nominate 2 or 3 varieties to be released. So how are you going to make sure that those varieties are going to be distributed to a large number of farmers so that you can get them assessed? Because I think in terms of methodology, if I understood well, there is kind of modification that needed to be happening before we can use tricot for variety release.
Yeah, one patent which has not been highlighted in the presentation so much is that we always include the varieties that are liked by farmers at the moment. So kind of this was informed by the CMS study, but there are more studies now. So we include varieties that are kind of seen as the best among farmers and processors. So they are kind of to represent the benchmark. So you will have, if you have 2 varieties that you propose for release, at least 3 or 2 other varieties will be added as a kind of benchmark, especially as it is a comparative method. This is very important. I don't know exactly what you meant by disseminate. You talked about the dissemination of varieties, maybe in that aspect I didn't. You probably meant that you want to have those varieties that you propose, that you put in the variety release trials, that those ones, that everybody should have them in their field, because some of them don't have them because they're an incomplete block. Is that what you said? Is that what you meant?
Yeah, Bukhar.
Yeah, yes, exactly that's what I meant, because it's incomplete and it's already, we need to have just set of 3. So those set of 3s are randomly distributed to the farmers, and the intention of the on-farm trials is to have at least those. You said that you're going to fix at least one variety. Is that correct, if I understood you? So in that set of 3, there is one that is permanent for all the farmers, or I don't know how do you say?
No, there's no one variety that is, it's an incomplete block, but in one, yes, it's sequentially balanced. So if we go to one community, we will always almost have all the varieties in that community. We know also who has that variety, and the results will also be fed back to the community. So the communities can see which variety in their region was identified as best. And the person who has that variety will be made public who that is. I mean, so all those varieties are in all the communities. It's not that every person has all those varieties, but if you do, for example, what we did, we have now 27 varieties evaluated. Then the first 10, the 10 varieties that are in a village, they almost all 10, yeah, they have all the varieties. And if they don't have a variety, then the first person in the next village or somewhere else has that variety. So it's not like that there are communities will only see just a part of the whole set. And 27 is enormous because we are also having a different objective also with this first application of tricot to see how it could function within breeding to go from one stage to the other. So if you have 50 clones evaluated and you want to see how they perform in farmers' conditions, you can bring them all the 50 to farmers, and then you at the end you need quite a lot of farmers. And if you don't take too many farmers, then you can at least say, well, we know that these 25 of the 50 are at least much less preferred. So then that could potentially inform breeding selection. But for the moment, we are looking at tricot only for the last stage and not for, but that's the reason why we have quite a lot of varieties in this example. But the idea is that you would go for like eight varieties, like 4 or 5, 4 varieties that are liked by the farmers and that are commonly used, and then 4 new ones or any other combination that is applicable.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for that response, Bella. And we've got a few more hands. We only have a couple more minutes left in this webinar. So if you can make these questions brief and then the responses as well. I'll start with Chidozie, then to Elizabeth Parks, and then Kido. Thanks.
Chidozie has lowered his hand, so maybe we can move on with Dr. Parks. Elizabeth?
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Bella and team, for this brilliant presentation. But I'm wondering, Cassava pipeline process map to CG NAS stage plan. It has it that the stage 6 and 7, where we normally do the on-farm and the national NCRP, is going to be done by the NAS partners.
Mm-hmm.
Are you thinking of training some of them? Because it may go out of our hands. We'll just be following, but not be solely responsible like before. Number two, I'm also, wait, please, one moment. The other thing I'm seeing here is that how would this demand creation trial, be seen as complementing each other? And then locations, NCRP will go over a wide location. So what is the plan? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you for this good remarks. The current project also that has been launched, the 1,000 Farms Tricot project, really focuses on capacity building within the CGIAR, but especially also in the NAS, because we know that the NAS are responsible for the variety release procedure and the last stage evaluation. So the objective of that project is really to train the NAS as well and look. And another aspect is also to look at cost-effective partnerships to do this. So that's the answer to your first question. Then we have so many ecologies included in this. Like you're saying, what do you mean by including a lot of ecologies? The breeding, what we see now from the multiple location trials is that usually varieties are promoted that do well everywhere, and if we keep that focus, then within the tricot, you also want to have those areas all represented, so you can you can see where is the common ground, which varieties really do well in all places. But if you can go further and you say, well, okay, we need maybe for a specific ecological zone, we might release this variety, and for another ecological zone, you might release another variety. So the tricot trials and the data they generate can contribute to having more information, more detailed information on the G by E interactions, and also in the external validity of the different breeding trial locations. And then you had a third one that I forgot. Can you remind me of that? You had a third question.
And I think on that, Bella, I'm going to have to come in and close the session now because it's at the top of the hour. So there's a few more questions in the chat, and then if we could respond to those who asked those questions through email or another means, please let's do. So in just closing here, a big thanks to you and Ms. Olama Olasebikan and Mr. Bello for their very interesting, very inspiring presentation on the extensive work you all have done on integrating gender into cassava breeding in Nigeria. And just want to let everyone know that the next webinar and the GLIN series will be presented by Dr. Gundula Fisher. Her presentation will be on gender transformative approaches used in Tanzania and Malawi. And she will present during the second week of May, and we'll communicate the exact date sometime soon. So with that, I thank you all for your great participation. We had a total of around 85, 86 participants for this webinar, and we really appreciate the support and interest. We'll be in touch on the date for the next webinar. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye for now.